Okay, this one's called Set Apart. Resisting the Jezebel spirit. All the water does not mix. God has been placing this subject upon my heart for a few months now. It is to do with the Jezebel spirit, the spirit of lust, and the way it holds people captive and opens the door to other kind of ideas further down the line, which is like a seed, planted in your mind, which can go down dangerous paths depending on how far you take it. I'm talking in particular, in my case, of the heavy influence of the music during the 1980s, where teens like myself were heavily marketed to via TV, magazines, conversations at school, even peer pressure, like my brother, like he loved music, and that all played into it and stuff. I'm talking about the overt sexual nature of what we were watching back then, a mild form of pornography. Now, at the time, I thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. The music was hitting on an energy we all wanted to be part of. Back then, musicians like Duran Duran, Japan, Adamant, Madonna, Blondie, Kajagoogoo, Siouxsie and the Banshees, Frankie, Wham and Human League, amongst loads of others, were wearing shed loads of makeup and giving good face in front of the camera and the music to match, and generally whittling around in front of the camera in a very provocative way. There was a saying back then, sex sells, and it sure did, but the worrying thing looking back on it is the reaction it had on me. Not blaming those bands in particular, but I'm just saying the general consensus of the time. At the time I actually enjoyed it, looked forward to watching them. I was permanently in a very aroused state. The music was very raunchy and would tap into many levels of excitement with a twist of naughtiness, which I'm sure the frequencies were tapped into for maximum effect. It even had an effect on my music as we were making at the time with my brother. I know that I've read things like there's certain frequencies, I don't know if they mix it at or I don't know, but like they have a certain effects on the body and stuff, and they would probably know all about that anyway at the time. And I think like a certain frequency was banned at one time to do with church music. I know that they can have like a big effect on the body and mind. And with all that, the trappings that come with that state of arousal, which is masturbation, and actually like longingly looking at these stars and stuff and wishing you were with them at the time. Stupid now, but like back at the time, that was the thing. Where I would have these individuals in mind whilst doing it, and that would be on posters on the wall, staring down at me, or like magazines or whatever. Now thinking back, after going through years and years and years of the same formula, now with satanic overtones added to the modern music, did that ultimately have an effect on my life and how it panned out with future relationships? Having gone through many years of mental diet torture to look the part, to look like these famous women, stars and actresses on the screen, I seem to be living my life through a prescribed TV filter, constantly checking my makeup in the mirror, tracing the Madonna filter look over my face, thinking wish I was as pretty as her, trying to achieve the same look, thinking that it would make me more desirable to men, but not stopping once to accept myself as I was. So, in effect, TV was teaching me to be of the mindset of a whore in some ways, looking back. Because it was all very popular at the time to, like sexual empowerment and stuff like that, and like the gay thing was coming to the forefront, and it was like making it very appealable, like to young minds and stuff. Whether that was like a deliberate social engineering experiment, I don't know. That in effect, with the change in the consciousness of to women being empowered to have sex casually, which Madonna was an advocate of, It seemed so empowering to be an equal to a man sexually, but in eventuality it proved to be a disaster in my case. Having been brought up a Christian, my mum always thought that I would be married early on, but the world changed from her day. As I said before, there was like a lot of social engineering going on. Marriage was disappearing fast, and casual sex was the norm for the day of the 1990s. Being isolated from meeting people in the normal fashion, i.e. communities and work, I ended up eventually dating online. I was also opening my eye gates into pornography on Birmingham cable and trying to learn what turned men on, and maybe being autistic I was sadly lacking in the flirting department and I didn't have a clue. Anyway, after some time having experience with a few dates and was too intimate too fast, because I believe these magazines and TV had like a massive effect on my mind of how I saw myself and how I saw guys and stuff like that. I think that it was just a continuing mind manipulation exercise. I realised that doing most things that a man wanted wasn't fruitful. It was all wham bam, thank you ma'am, but I never saw them again after that. Those 6 years of those kind of encounters was deeply painful and left me with scars I've never been able to repair, although I am tougher for it. Having said all that at the time, going back to the 1980s Jezebel spirit, my family and I were living in a dark, miserable, damp, neglected maisonette, and the TV was the only source of light to us. So the music was an uplift and a hope in a miserable situation, and was fun to watch. As I say, like the music was always an uplift and it was an exciting time. So I think the moral of this story is whatever that you let into your eye gates can have an effect on your mind and ultimately where you are heading in life, as innocent as it's seen at the time. I think that we are coming into a time where it's going to be looked back upon with new eyes, and where we are currently in our sexual evolution. How full on the last 40 years have become sexually, up to the point where it's gays and trans and everything in between, and like multi-crazy gender ideologies, and how much media has altered our perspective on our personal view of our sexuality. If ever anyone is wondering what the Jezebel spirit is, obviously out of the Bible. She was basically, I think, a queen. She was just like a Baal worshipper, like she was demonic, and she was married to another person who's equally demonic. And she stands for sexual immorality, fornicating, encouraging sexual encounters with all genders and the neighbour's cat, manipulating people into sexual immorality, idolatrous, leading people away from Christ and replacing it with a false god, which could be loving false idols like what I did, which could be the music industry. That's just a small example. Using fear to control others and false teachings. So it's like she's just totally false and leads people away from anything that's good and wholesome and like respectful towards your own mind and human body. God gave me a vision of a world without a Jezebel spirit, where pornography was banned, where men and women wouldn't act overtly sexually, and dress decently and not perverse, or encouraging that kind of reaction out of a viewer. An organic world where sex was in the right place, within marriage only, where it was used for the creation of children and love between a man and a wife, or husband and wife. No sex outside marriage. I think this is the way God now wants us to return to, as it was intended, and I think that world could work now after having gone through the last 40 years in this totally sexually focused society. I think if you bring a child into the world, and teach you good things, and like, you know, like say like some Jewish families, you know, they don't let those kind of things into their eye gates, and like it's not even thought of, you know, or like scratching your itch at an early age, because you're like you are watching this stuff and it does cause a reaction, and it's meant to. That, as I say, they make an industry out of it. You know, like food or whatever, you know, like to encourage you to buy it, and you know, all your senses are stimulated. Like I've said in the previous videos, that the Jezebel spirit is a destroyer of souls, and for every person that puts a lot into a relationship and is true, and then a Jezebel comes along and makes it easy for that partner to fornicate with them and steals that person away. And then that, you know, the other person feels unworthy because the Jezebel looks, you know, slimmer, thinner, more exciting, you know, where, you know, like they're not going to be fruitful to that person. I'm getting all in a jam at the moment because I'm V2K blocking my mind. These Jezebels are heading down a road they may not return from, you know, like including those that fornicate with them. And being in that position, you know, like I've been with boyfriends that have preferred the Jezebel kind of person over me, and more or less like put me down to, you know, just because I'm straightforward, that I'm not exciting enough, or, you know, that I'm too close-minded. You know, like I just want a straightforward life. I just think these people are so easily available, these Jezebel types, that, you know, like a guy's going to probably run, or a woman, you know, in their direction anyway, because like they're kind of being programmed to do it. You know, anything from responsibility or whatever that, you know, like your average person have to get on with. And God says you are set apart. They were attracted to that kind of person in the first place, and you were better off without them. So, you know, like the idea of like this video is just saying that you're set apart, and like be careful what you let through your eye gates and stuff, and you know, watch that seed or that thought grow. I know that you know, like not to be afraid of the world and stuff like that, but it's like getting the balance right, and you know, like having a lifetime experience. You know, like it's better to look back and go, you know, like, well, I exercised a bit of discipline with that, rather than look back with bitterness, you know, like what you didn't have, because through your inadequacies or whatever that you missed out on. You know, it's better to hold out for somebody that means you well than to fornicate with a Jezebel spirit, because it'll just deplete you of like everything that you are. And like the idea as well beyond this video is just, well, as I say, is like watch, you know, how that seed grows in your head. You know, it may seem exciting, but you know, like it does have consequences in the long term. Okay. Thank you.